are going to be making a coil pot. I am going to show you how to use the coil method to make a vase or something like that. So you will get your clay in chunks. You will have a board to work on so that you can pick it up and move it easily. I am going to take a chunk of clay and first just kind of wad it up. You'll have something that looks kind of like this. And then you're going to roll it out to make your coil. So I'm just going to start. The goal isn't to press it down to get it as skinny as you can. You're just barely adding pressure, but you're making the coil longer. So you're pushing the clay out to make the coil longer. When it gets really long, you can use 2 hands. You want to try to make it even in thickness. You don't want it to get really thick in one place and thin in another, because then it won't come out evenly. So you're just going to roll it back and forth. You can see how it's still really thick right there? Just want to keep rolling it back and forth. The first coil you do, you want to be pretty long. That's because this is going to be the base of your pot. Okay, so I've got my coil. This is kind of thick at the end and I really don't need it that long. I'm gonna pinch my edge in so that at the end it'll curl nice. I'm gonna rip off this edge too. So now I've got a coil that's pretty even, and I'm going to start rolling it up. Make sure you're kind of pressing it together as you go so your coils are stuck together. You want your base to be a pretty good circle, so if your coils aren't even, then your circle won't be. So make sure you try your best, and we're not perfect, but try to get your coils basically the same thickness. If it's really obvious that you've got a really thick area and a really thin area, it's not going to work. Okay, so I've got kind of just a nice base here. It makes a nice circle. You can tell where I had pinched in the edge. That just helps it to kind of blend seamless. Now we're going to smooth it out because we don't want our coils to show. So you can either work going out from the center out or from the edge in. Doesn't matter. And just take your finger and start lightly pushing down to smooth out your clay. You can use tools to help smooth out your clay too, but you've got to get the big part smoothed out, and I think your finger is the best way to do that. Smooth it out. Gonna flip it over, smooth out the other side. Doesn't really matter which side you choose to make the inside of the mug and which side you choose to make the outside. You just want to make sure your base is basically a nice circle. And smooth it all out. Be careful with how much pressure you're putting when you do this. If you put too much pressure, you're going to change the shape. Now I might want to change the shape, like if I look right here, I've got a little bump. You can kind of lightly tap it and get the bump to go away. If you have bumps, just lightly tap them. right here I've got a little bump. Got to smooth this little edge out a little bit more. You should have a nice round disc. You can take this tool. This tool is great for smoothing things out. And just kind of lightly scrape. You can tell it just kind of scrapes everything to a nice smooth surface. Same thing on the other side if I need it. Okay, so once I've got my base done, I can start making coils to add on top of it. Same thing, you're just going to rip off a piece. Your coils don't need to be as long here. So you don't need to use as much clay for each coil. It doesn't work as well to take them and roll them in your hand because they get really uneven and they'll get really thin. And then your artwork will be really weak. So you don't want that. Okay, so you can tell this coil is not as long as my last one, but I've got my thickness pretty even. Really pay attention to that thickness. It's so important. And I'm going to scratch the surface right along this edge. This is called scoring. In ceramics, we call this scoring when we scratch the surface. I'm using a toothpick. You will have toothpicks and paper clips in your clay set. They do the same thing. And I'm going to dip my finger in water and I'm going to lightly wet. This is what we call slipping. It helps bind two things together. I am going to start my coil. I'm going to pinch one end like I did last time. Pinch one end in. Then I'm going to start my coil. Bring it around. You can kind of spin your platform that it's on if that helps you. Let's actually pinch this end in too, so it'll go up easier. So see, that just kind of falls right on top of it now. So right now, I'm just making it go straight up. So I've used this coil. I'm going to make another one. Now I'm going to start making it go out because let's say you want it to curve out. The same thing applies if you're wanting it to curve in. So you're going to make your coil. Do not rush your coils. If your coil is not equal in width, or if you get it too thin, your whole piece is going to fall apart. So do not be sloppy. Okay, I'm going to pinch my ends. We're going to start it right where the other one ended. You can tell it'll just fit right on top. Now, if I wanted to make it start going out, instead of just setting it directly on top, that will make it go straight up, I am going to lean it out just a little bit. So I'm just going to go around and gently lean it out. Okay, so I'm going to take a break from the coiling part. I'm going to coil one more little piece. We're just going to do a little coil real quick to try to kind of even out this dip. Alright, so now I'm going to take a little break from coiling and I'm going to smooth out the inside of my pot. I'm not going to worry about the outside yet because I can do that all at once. You can use something like this, you can use your finger, and you're just going to go around and first kind of work in the crease. When you're smoothing out the inside or the outside, you always want to have one hand bracing so you don't lose your shape. Otherwise, it'll just keep pushing the clay out. And then the other hand smoothing. So again, you can use a tool or you can use your finger. It's up to you. What works better for you? And you are going to start smoothing out the inside of your pot, being sure you're bracing it with one hand. You may need to use a combination of both tools, or of your tool and your hand, to get it smooth. And it may not be perfect at first. Just keep working on it, but make sure you're bracing the outside with your hand. You can see it's starting to get smooth instead of coiled. So the reason you stop at the beginning after just a few coils is because it's going to be really hard later to get your hand in there to smooth it out. And again, just use a combination of a tool and your fingers. You want to push the clay up. So I can keep working on this. I can come back to it later, or I could smooth it out more now. But you can see my coils are disappearing. I'm going to go ahead and stop and move on so that you all can see me make a little bit more progress. I'm just going to do a very small pot, just to give you an idea. Don't worry if it's slightly, like I've got a little bump right here, but later, you know, just like I said before, you can tap those bumps back in and get things all symmetrical. So I'm going to roll out another coil. I'm going to do 2 more coils. I'm just going to do something real small. I'm going to use small coils for now so I have more control over what I'm doing. Another coil. I'm going to do 2 more coils. I'm just going to do something real small. going to use small coils for now so I have more control over what I'm doing. Really pay attention to the thickness of your coils. Try to make sure you're matching it up every time. Pinch in your edges. Again, do you want it to tilt out and keep getting wider? Do you want it to tilt in? We're going to do one more round tilting out, and then my next row, just going to push them down as you go. My next row I'm going to make tilt in. I'm just going to do one more row. Bumps like this are easily fixed. Okay. And we'll make this one curve in a little bit. So to curve it in, you just place the coil instead of right on top, slightly inside. If I really wanted to exaggerate this shape, I would add more rows of both. But for this short demo, this will be fine. Okay, I'm going to finish smoothing out my inside again. This time I'm going to push down or up. Just use, you'll notice when you're doing it that you just got to kind of, sometimes it'll go down, sometimes it'll go up. It just depends on if you've got a coil that's bigger in one place or another. Use your hand for support so you don't accidentally punch a hole. But be gentle. You can tell I just kind of squeezed a little bit over here and made that thinner. So just be careful. I'm noticing one part as I'm working this that's lower than my other parts. So I will go in and add a coil over there in just a minute before I start smoothing out my outside. Again, be careful not to squeeze too much. You've just got to be really gentle with your pressure. You can see how it's a little lopsided over here. This part's not a big deal. You just kind of tap it in. Maybe I want this indentation to match on this side. Could just tap that in. Again, that's all stuff I might want to work on though after I see it smooth. But right here, I got to even that out. So I'm going to make a little bitty coil. Pinch my edges in. That's a little bit too big. I'm just trying to kind of even this height up right here. Okay, so once I've got it all how I like it, I'm ready to smooth my outside. It's the same principle. Put one hand inside of your pot. for support, and let your other hand smooth out your coils. This is going to be a little bit easier for you. You may want to smooth some of them out as you go. I'm doing this all in one day, but as you work it, even though we cover it up, air will still get to your artwork and it will still start to dry it out and it will get harder to smooth out. So don't wait till the second to last day to smooth out all your coils at once. You may kind of want to do several rows, smooth it out, do some more rows. And I'm just getting it basically smooth right now. And then I'll go back with that smoothing tool I showed you earlier and really get it smooth. That's just a finishing touches tool. Don't use that to do this part. You'll end up poking a hole in your pot. Again, I can shape it more once I get it smoothed out, because this one definitely needs a little bit of shaping. Only about halfway through this smoothing process. This takes a while. And you can't rush it. Again, you'll end up squeezing it too thin. This is kind of like turning into kind of a little teacup. Again, I know it's not perfect yet. I'm just trying to get it basically smooth. I probably will not have time to perfect this on the video.
Alright, part 2 of this video, just to make sure I can upload it all to YouTube. Try not to handle it too much as far as picking it up, because it's going to lose its shape. Try to kind of keep it on the board. Once you get to this point, you don't really want to handle it until it gets a little bit drier to that leather hard phase, then you can handle it a little bit more. Something like this, right here down where the base is, I may need to kind of use this tool to get in there, smooth it out some. My base is a little more pronounced in some places than others, so I want to try to even that out. Maybe kind of, this is where you would kind of take some time to shape it. Like I got this way kind of heaved up. So I'm just going to keep tapping that clay back in. See how that bump's going away? On this big spot right here. One way I know that mine is not very circular yet, and one way you can kind of test that is you can kind of spin it. See, then it gives you an opportunity to see everything that's wrong with it. So like this side still needs a lot of work. Again, I picked this up, but I'm being very gentle with it. The reason this is so bumpy right here, this is a great example. The reason this part is stuck out so much where I'm kind of working on it is because maybe I had a coil that was thicker there maybe than everywhere else. So I'm trying to kind of smooth it out and match it a little bit better. Now, as I start to get ready to work on the lip, if it's something you're going to drink out of, or even if it's not, and right now I'm just kind of going around tapping it, trying to kind of even out my shape. I time on this because this is just a quick demo. The lip, when I get to the point where I want to start kind of evening out this lip, I'm going to go around and kind of pinch it. You see, every time I turn it, I see something that I can keep improving. I'm going to go ahead around and kind of pinch my lip. You want the lip of, especially with something you're drinking out of, you want that to be extra thin. Not extra thin, but you want it to be thinner than everywhere else. You can also kind of use this as a chance to kind of get it all level. You can tap parts down. If you've got a part that's too tall, just tap it down. Just work on your craftsmanship. Ceramics is not a quick process. If I had a, you know, you can't really make a pot in one class period, so I'm just kind of trying to show you as best I can. So I guess this part's a little thick, but when I pinch it out, then it gets too tall. So I just gotta kind of tap it down. It's starting to look a little nicer. You know, there's still things that aren't perfect, but we're getting there. You can see my center has a really nice even circle. Could go around and just really gently smooth it out with this if I want. Again, be very gentle if you're using this piece support. You're just scraping the surface to smooth it. Another great smoothing technique is to use a wet sponge. I'm going to go grab a sponge real quick. This is something you won't be doing in the beginning. Do not take a wet sponge to your artwork the first day you're working on it. I am just doing this for demonstration purposes. You can dampen a sponge, just damp, not wet, damp. And that kind of cleans off the rough surface without having to alter the shape too much. You just kind of go around. You can also use that to kind of clean up your lip. You can fold it up like this and go around the lip. And that'll help give you a nice surface that you actually want to put your lips to. It's not going to be bumpy and hurt. Okay, so let's pretend I had this perfect. I like the shape. I was ready to move on and add to it. A couple of things you can do. You can stamp into it. If you have an object at home, like a wooden star or, you know, whatever, you can stamp into it. Don't push all the way through. You can stamp. That gives you an interesting texture. Put your finger behind for support if you're stamping. You may scratch into it. Just use a toothpick and scratch. You can add to it. Now, if you want to add to it, you have to do what we call slipping and scoring. So I'm going to demonstrate that by adding a handle. When you do a handle, it's just like making...
Perfect. I liked the shape. I was ready to move on and add to it. A couple of things you can do. You can stamp into it if you have an object at home, like a wooden star or, you know, whatever. You can stamp into it. Don't push all the way through, but you can stamp. That gives you an interesting texture. Put your finger behind for support if you're stamping. You may scratch into it. Just use a toothpick and scratch. You can add to it. Now, if you want to add to it, you have to do what we call slipping and scoring. So I'm going to demonstrate that by adding a handle. When you do a handle, it's just like making a coil. Think about the thickness. Now, it may feel weak to you at the beginning, but when it dries and it's been fired, it's going to be really sturdy. So you don't have to do a big bulky handle on a delicate piece of artwork. A handle is something that also takes multiple class periods. It's not actually something we can do in one day because you want it to harden a little bit. You want to at least wait a day, but we're going to kind of put a handle on this today because we're going to try. So if I were to put a handle on it, I would think about, I'd kind of start to measure. Maybe I want this to kind of have a pretty curve on the outside. I'm going to kind of look and think about, do I like the way this looks? Do I think it's too thick? Do I think it's about right? I kind of like it. I'm going to pinch off the end. I kind of want to make it curl up a little on that side too. So you would start to fit it to your artwork. Decide what works, what doesn't. You know, I'm not sure having two curves, that looks like a little bit much. Maybe I do it like this. Maybe the bigger curves on the bottom. I could do something like that. So what I would ordinarily do is kind of smooth and clean out my handle. And then I would set it aside for a class period. And I would wrap it up with everything else, but I wouldn't attach it that day because it's not going to be very strong. It's not going to hold its shape. Today, I don't really have that choice, but that's what I want you all to do when you do your handles. I want you to make them, and I want you to set them aside for a day and give them a chance to harden a little bit. Your clay is going to harden a little bit every day. That actually works to your advantage because your base will get stronger as it hardens. So as you build on top of it, it won't be as flimsy. It also means, again, you kind of need to think about smoothing a little bit as you go. Don't wait till day 6 of the 7 days of clay. So when I attach my handle, I'm going to attach it here because I don't really want that to show. You're going to slip and score. So this is how you would attach anything. If you were adding eyes, if you were adding, you know, a nose or whatever your idea was. Thin 3D stripes. That might actually look kind of cool. You're going to scratch. You're going to get it wet. And then you're going to attach it. Really press down. Make sure it's going to stay connected. We don't want it to come undone. So really press. You'll see your water kind of seep out the edge, and that's how you know you've got it attached real nice and good. Alright, so the attaching anything else would be the same way. If I wanted to roll out coil strips, and attach stripes to mine, I could scratch it, slip it, and attach it. Feet are the same way. So when you make a foot, whatever shape you want for your project, whatever works for you, maybe you want something, you know, if I were to attach it to this, I'm not going to, but if I were to attach it to this, I would want something kind of ornate to go with my handle, maybe a nice little curve like that it would sit on. So these, again, they would need to sit because right now they cannot support the weight of all of this clay. So you have to sit and let them dry for a day or two before you attach them. Remember, when it's leather hard, you can still attach. So wait and let it dry for a day or two before you attach it. If you want to cut out a shape, let's say I wanted to stick a heart on this, I would take it, flatten it out with my palm, well, maybe not that much because now I got it stuck. That didn't work. You want to do a shape, flatten it, just not that much because it'll stick. Or maybe flatten it on a sheet of paper, it'll peel off of paper. And then take whatever your scoring tool is that you have, whether it's a toothpick or a paper clip. You can cut your shape out that you wanted to attach. I want to clean mine up a little because I've got a few bumpy spots on it. Then I would slip and score it, scratch it up real good, get the water, dampen it, and then I would push it down. That's how I would attach something. If your clay, as we work, mine is not this way today, As we work, if your clay starts to get too dry, you can always dip your finger in the water, re-wet it, and kind of dampen it, and it'll smooth your cracks out. That'll kind of happen to you. Like even my little handle right here has a little crack in it that I want to smooth out. And again, that's a good place for the sponge too if it's a broader area. So those are the basics for how to make a pot in ceramics. Again, I'm just going to keep working this till I get it exactly how I like it, because I don't think I like it. I don't think it's perfect yet, you can tell. So I'm just going to keep working mine. Notice all those little bumps. Again, a good way to tell is to spin it. You can tell where the bumps and the high points are. Don't spin it super fast. That's not permission to make it a game. It's just meant to kind of help you gauge what could be improved. Where are your high points? Where is it kind of wobbly? It's handmade, so it's okay if it's not perfect. But you're just going to keep tapping. You can see as I tap, it changes the shape. Just keep on tapping. You can barely nudge and push things out a little bit if you want, until you get it exactly perfect how you like it. All right. Good luck.